Greetings and welcome to this next edition of us going through the lives of people in the Bible. And this week we are studying Naomi and Ruth. Now, a lot of people focus on Ruth, or they tend to focus a lot on Ruth. I mean, she has a book named after her. But we're also going to be focusing a lot on Naomi. And in my eyes, Naomi is the greater person, is the more astounding person. And hopefully, through this study, you'll see why. But as all things should be started, let's start with prayer. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity that we have to examine the lives of people within the Bible, to learn from them, to see the morals and lessons. And they lift us up, Lord. I thank you for not hiding it away. And Lord, let us know what you wish for us to find out, to learn. May you be glorified through this in Jesus' name. Amen. So let's begin. The story starts with, in the days when the judges ruled. I'll pause right there. In the days when the judges ruled. What was that? How did that work? Who were the judges? And what's all that about? So to give us a context, it was after Joshua, before King Saul. So, and setting that up, we have Joshua at the end of that. At the end of the book of Joshua, he gathered all of the leaders of Israel, all the tribes, everyone, actually not just the leaders. He gathered everyone there. And he told them, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away all the gods that your fathers used to serve. You guys make a decision. If you find it evil in your eyes, if you find it wrong, if you don't want to serve God, make a decision this day. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So he's given them an ultimatum, a choice. God led us into the promised land. And now make a choice. Will you serve God? Or will you do your own thing? And everyone said, we will serve God. We will obey his voice. And they made a covenant that day. Now, all the days that Joshua lived, and all the days of the elders, meaning those who were alive during the time when they made this promise, Israel stood with God. They were with them. It was wonderful. However, when Joshua died, and all the generation, in other words, those who were with Joshua, those who had seen Joshua, after they died, there arose another generation after them that did not know the Lord or the work that he had done in Israel. That is sad. You had fathers who did not teach their sons what had happened. You had fathers that did not testify to their children the great works that God had done in their lives. And because you did not have one generation teaching another, they forgot God. They forgot everything that happened. And if Moses didn't write down the history, if he didn't write down the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, it probably would have been all lost. All it took was just a few generations, and that was it. That was it. So what God had started to do is he rose up judges. He would allow things to happen, bad things to happen. You would have an army or a nation come and conquer them. and make Israel subjects to that nation. And then when people would cry out within that situation, God would raise up people, these individuals called judges that would, there were remnants, I should say, that still believed in God. So even though as a whole the nation didn't, there were still those that kind of did. And from those individuals, God brought up people who would guide the nation back toward God and then free the people from captivity. And then those people would be as guides, as mentors, as teachers, just as, I wouldn't exactly say as Moses and Joshua, but there were individuals who would give counsel and guide the country, guide the people, tell them what God is telling them to do. They're kind of like prophets in a way, but they had more of like a leading, guiding type of thing. They're more like teachers. And so God would raise up these judges. And whenever the Lord raised judges, the Lord was the judge. So God would be the one ruling through them. So instead of one king and having lineage down through them, God would raise up people from different tribes, from different places within Israel. And God would rule through them. So God would find a person after his heart each time and use them. So that's the difference. With kings, it's generally passed down through family or through some way. With judges, it wasn't passed down, it was God who chose. And so the Lord was the judge through the judges, and he would save people from the hand of the enemies all the days of the judge. But sadly, whenever the judge died, people turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them, bound down to them, and they did not drop the practices or their stubborn ways. That's the context. So during the time, now going back to this, during the time when Israel as a nation stepped away from God, sometimes it was 40 years, sometimes it was 70 years in captivity. But during the moment when they were rebelling against God, there was a famine. And God would send these famines and other things to bring their attention back, to bring their focus back to God. So during one of these moments, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab. So because of the great famine, he decided to migrate to a different area where there was better food. So he, his wife, and his two sons. Was this a good idea? Probably not, but he made the decision. So far as we know, because of the language that his wife uses, they seemed to be one of those who stayed with God, and we'll get along. We'll get more into that a bit later on. But he made the decision. His family followed. His name was Elimelech, which means God of the king. Not speaking to himself as a god, hopefully, but pointing to a God who is the king. At this time, they had no kings. Maybe saying God of the other kings. But anyway, that's what his name meant. And his wife was Naomi. Naomi means pleasant. And they had two sons. So they had two sons in Israel, Mahlon and Kilian. I believe it's Kilian. It could be Chilian. I'm going to pronounce it Kilian. Now, Mahlon means sick or to be weak. Kilian means pining, destruction, failing. It's that which is suffering a mental or physical decline because of a broken heart. People during this time named their kids based on what was happening in their lives, or based on some characteristics of the child. And this tells you the condition of the family of Elimelech. They were weak, they were sick, their situation was failing. There was destruction. There was this broken of a heart. They were suffering in Israel. It was not easy. It wasn't a situation where it was like, oh, hey, there's not much food. Let's move. They were suffering in Israel to the point where they named their kids sickness, destruction. That was how they felt. And so to try to ease their suffering, Elimelech made the executive decision, let's try to have the suffering end, and let's go to a place where we can have a better life. And he went to Moab, where truly there was more food, but it was a pagan culture. However, there are signs that they were able to maintain the worship of God within the home, within that pagan culture. It's not easy. He took a risk. And so, however, in the land of Moab, Elimelech died. And the two sons were left, Mahlon and Chilion, and Naomi, left in Moab. And after Elimelech died, Mahlon and Chilion took wives from the people that were there. The wife of one was Orpah, and the wife of the second was Ruth. And they lived like this for about 10 years. After which Mahlon and Chilion both died. Now, you may think, wait a minute. The Bible does say that no, Ammonites, Moabites, they shouldn't enter the assembly of the Lord. And in Deuteronomy chapter 7, God commands, do not intermarry with the Moabites and the people of the lands. Giving them your daughters to your sons, taking their daughters for your sons, or giving your daughters to their sons, taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me. And that's the key phrase. That's the key phrase. Yeah. That's the qualifier, the reason why. If you go with them, they're going to turn you away. However, if we take a deeper look, in the book of Ezra, there was a moment where, so some context of the situation. Israel sinned. This was after Manasseh, after all the kings. Babylonian captivity occurs. 70 years after the Babylonian captivity, Cyrus writes a decree allowing people to start coming back. And so they started coming back and settling. And then Ezra, he makes the journey to start rebuilding the temple. And so he comes, they rebuild the temple, and after the temple is finished, Ezra then starts being as like a guide to the people. And he looks around and he sees, and the people approach him and said, Israel and the priests, the Levites, have not separated themselves from the people and their abominations. And it goes on. The Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Ammonites, Moabites, Egyptians, and Amorites. They have taken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves. And they are mixed. So it's that which wasn't supposed to happen, happened. And so what Ezra does is at first, he decided, let me stand and everyone come to me, and like, oh, I'm gonna check out the situation. But then he was told, actually stay where you are. And through the course of several months, families are going to come, and you will look at the families. And so by the name, these started in the 10th month, he ended in the 1st month. You're talking at least several months here. And he would examine the matter. The way I understand this, the way I understand this passage and the way it worked is, it wasn't just simply, okay, who married wives that aren't of the tribe of Israel? Okay, leave them. There you go. It's not what occurred here. Each family went up one by one, and he looked at it. Out of those who did intermarry, is the wife and the children, are the children following God? If the husband was able to have the wife leave their gods and worship the true God, let the family stay. But if the wife didn't, in other words, she still practiced her own gods, she still did, the sacrifices, abominations, and the children aren't even doing that thing either. Ezra would say, this family, you're in a bind. It's dragging you down. So for those families, Ezra told them, you need to separate. Now, yes, this was a form of divorce. Is divorce okay? That's a different topic. Maybe we'll touch on it later on. But in this case, there was people, they intermarried, and then the fathers failed to do their job of teaching their kids, of convincing the woman that they fell in love with to worship God. And now their family was being dragged down, and they were being dragged down into a situation where they were idol worshiping, or were around the idol worshiping. They're doomed to fail. Within this context, so within the context of Ezra, through the prayer and everything, those who, so the foreign wives that did start serving God and accepted Judaism within the household, those families remained. But those that did not, Ezra said, you guys need to separate and recommit with the Lord. So with that, that's most likely what happened with Ruth and Naomi, with Mahlon and Chilion. That Ruth and Naomi, we see evidence of this, that they seem to have left the gods, the pagan culture and everything, and fell in love with this family and attached to what this family was doing. We see that the daughters, this is the daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, as soon as the sons died, and as soon as their husbands died without having any children, they didn't go back to their families. They didn't go back to their mothers and fathers. They didn't go back to their culture. They stayed with Naomi. And to me, this speaks volumes of who Naomi is. They fell in love with this woman who feared God, who worshiped God, who was a child of God, and they wanted to be around her. Now, Orpah and Ruth, although their names are not of Hebrew origin, their names have an interesting meaning. Orpah, which means the nape, or which is the back of the neck, or the back. And you have Ruth, whose name means a female associate or friend. And it's interesting that they lived up to their names, because Naomi was looking at her two daughters-in-law out of love. And she said, it's in a culture where you need to work, where there needs to be labor, there's no manpower. Go back to your families, go back to your culture, marry someone. That way you can live and survive better, and you have a better chance. Go. And may God, may Jehovah be kind to you. May the Lord bless you and grant you rest with your new husbands. So she kissed him farewell. And look at the wording here. Orpah and Ruth lifted up their voices and wept. They did not want to leave Naomi. They loved her so much. And they said, no, let us go with you. You want to leave? We'll leave all our culture. We'll leave our gods. We'll leave everything that's here around us, and we'll go with you. Both of them said that. But Naomi was stern about it. She was determined. She said, no, turn back. Why will you go with me? I have no more sons. And even if you wait, it's going to be way too long. Turn back. Go. Turn back. And she acknowledges that which the Lord had given her, everything that she had experienced, it's from the hand of God. She's not complaining against God. She's not she's recognizing what she has, the bad things that are happening in her life. God allowed it. God is giving it to her. Why? Why did this family have to go through so much suffering? I believe so that there can be a blessed ending. And there is a very blessed ending. We'll get to that. So again, with weeping and tears, with wailing of voices, Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye and went. So she turned her back, but with much tears. Ruth, she clung to Naomi and said, "Nuh-uh, I ain't leaving you." Naomi was saying, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Notice, going back to her gods. That means if you're going back to something, you don't have it at the moment. So based off the language, we get the idea that within the household, even with Mahlon and Chilion, they served God. There was no pagan worship. And Orpah and Ruth believed in God, accepted, and we see that they're more or less, Ruth is more or less familiar with how the laws and things kind of work. So it's, again, speaks volumes, it's powerful, but it's not easy to do. And Ruth says, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, in other words, where you live, I will live. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord, and she says Jehovah now, do so to me and more, if anything but death parts me from you. And when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined, she said no more and allowed it. Again, her name means an associate or a friend. She sticks. But that was only done through tears and when she didn't want to go back. She loved Naomi and the culture, and I believe the God of Naomi. So the two of them go back to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred. Naomi's back. They recognized her. They said, isn't that Naomi? Naomi. And Naomi told all of them, don't call me Naomi. Naomi means pleasant, remember. Call me Mara. Mara means bitter. For the Almighty, it's God, has dealt very bitterly with me. God had given me a difficult hand. I had suffered a lot by the hand of God. I went full. I went with an entire family to Moab. And I came back with nothing. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So they came at the beginning of the season. Naomi understood things. Now, Ruth said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and glean the ears of grain after him whose sight I shall find favor. And Naomi said, go. Now, within Israel, there was a law about reaping fields, and that's written in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 22. And when you reap the harvest of your land, don't reap your field up to the edge. Don't reap the entire corners. Leave some. Don't pick everything up. Leave a portion that you do not collect. Nor shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. In other words, if you are picking things up, picking up wheat and things fall, don't pick it up. Leave it. Leave them for the poor and for the sojourner, the traveler. I am the Lord your God. In Deuteronomy, it also adds the vineyard. Anything that you are collecting, anything that you are, picking fruit or vegetables or whatever, do not collect everything. Leave it for those who are passing by and they're hungry so that they can take something and eat it. So those who have nothing to eat or they have a poor harvest so that they can go to other places and have some food. Don't collect everything. And it seems that Ruth, perhaps she knew this, perhaps not. I'm going to lean on the side of she probably heard from Naomi about how they're not supposed to collect everything till the end. And it just so happened, and I love this word. It's mikre in Hebrew. It means by accident or by chance. Kind of like eeny, meeny, miny, miny, mo, as we say. So Ruth went out to the fields to pick up what people are collecting. And it just so happened by pure accident, by pure chance, as we say, that Ruth went onto the field of Boaz. And he just so happened to be of the same clan, the same family of Elimelech. Sometimes there are moments that they just so happen and they change our lives forever. One moment can ruin a life completely, and one moment can change a life for the better completely. And this was one of those moments. She happened to go directly on the field that would change her life. And behold, Boaz, he came from Bethlehem, from the city to his field, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to the manager, you can say, the manager, "Who is that woman? I don't recognize her." Which tells us that Boaz, he likely either knew who were his own, maybe they had special garments or something, or Ruth did not look Hebrew, which probably is the more likely option. I mean, she was not Jewish, so she likely did not look Jewish. And they said, "Oh, she's the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers.' So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest." Now, it's interesting. Ruth didn't have to ask permission according to the law. She could have just come and start collecting from the corners, the edges, what she needed, collect what she needed for the day and go home. But she was being polite. She came up and asked, "May I collect? Is it okay?" And he said, "Yeah." So which shows some character of Ruth. She didn't have to ask permission, but she did anyway, out of respect, out of kindness. And Boaz, he comes up to Ruth directly now. He's the boss of the field. And he says, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not glean from any other field, and do not leave this one. Stay here and keep close to my young women." So the young women who are collecting, stay close to them. "Let your eyes be on the field that you are reaping, and go after them." In other words, he's saying, be as one of my workers. "Have I not charged the young men not to touch you?" In other words, no one has harassed you. No one has said anything to you. And that will continue to be the case. "And when you're thirsty, go up to the barrels of water we have, or go to where we have my water, owned by me, and drink from it, please." In other words, make yourself at home on my field. And Ruth, the way she says thank you, she falls on her face. This was a big show of great gratitude and respect. So she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I'm a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her and said, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law, since the death of your husband, has been fully told to me. How you left your father, your mother, your native land, and you came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Gossip travels fast. Remember, the entire city was stirred, and everyone knew Naomi came back and what Ruth had done. Everyone has heard of Ruth. So it's all that the manager had to say to Boaz was, that's the Moabite woman. The rumors you've been hearing, that's her. And notice the remark that Boaz makes. That Ruth had come to the God of Israel to take refuge under his wings, which gives us a glimpse that people were seeing that Ruth, she didn't just come and assimilate into the culture. She was worshiping God. And this phrase here, it's a testimony that people were seeing her. There were rumors. She was the popular one. Everyone, they knew who she was. They were watching her. And the remark that they could make, or that Boaz could definitely make, is that she is taking refuge under God, under the God of Israel, in the God of Israel. And she, being a Moabite, a non-Jew, serving God in such a way, that gave her a lot of respect in the eyes of people. Now, who was Boaz again? Boaz was, as I love the King James Version with this explanation here, he was a mighty man of wealth. That means high in authority, and he was rich. God blessed him with money. God blessed him with what he had a say in what was going on. And he was of the family of Elimelech. That's important. And beyond that, outside of just letting her pick up in the field and drink water when she's thirsty, at mealtime, you can say lunchtime, Boaz came up to her and said, come here, eat with us. Have bread, have dip, drink the wine. So she sat with the other workers, because this is the VIP lounge of the business. And they passed to her the roasted grain, baked goods, bread, and she ate until she was satisfied. It wasn't just, like rationing it out. All right, here you go. No, she ate until she was stuffed, and she had a whole lot left over. So they kept giving her food. She ate, and it wasn't just like, no, they're like, hey, take it, come on. This is your portion. Keep on eating. Go for it. Because we see toward the end of verse 18, she brought back home with her the leftovers as well. And she gave to Naomi the leftovers that she had from lunchtime. And they were eat. And so they ate, and it was wonderful. And on top of that, the unexpected blessing. When she rose to glean, and when she rose up to gather more, Boaz, he instructed the young people there, like the managers and so forth. Let her pick up. Do not reproach her. Don't say anything negative to her. Do not harass her. She's under my protection. He made sure they all knew. And he also told them, when you guys are collecting stuff, on purpose, drop some things behind you. You got a bundle and be like, oops, and go on. Drop things on purpose for her. Be kind. Kind of like throw it back. That way she doesn't have to work as hard to collect. And after she had beaten out what she collected, so the process was that they would, for like wheats and grains, they would collect it, and then they would thrash it against like they would sometimes beat it against rocks, or they would put it in, they would first beat it to kind of loosen things up, loosen the seeds. And then what they would often do is they would kind of throw it up in the air. And so the seeds were heavier and they would fall to the ground. But the lighter stuff that you didn't eat, those are light, and they would kind of like breeze in the wind. And so that was an easy way of separating all the stuff. And Ruth was able to gather an ephah of barley. So what is an ephah? So I looked online and there's a lot of people giving a lot of different measurements. So I'm just going to stick to an illustration that is given to us in the Bible. In Exodus chapter 16, we're told that 1 omer is 1/10 of an ephah. So 1 ephah is 10 omers. Now, within Exodus 16, God, he sends down manna. This is bread from heaven. They're like these small little pancakes that tasted like honey. It must have been very delicious. But you had these small little pancakes that fell from heaven. It was like some kind of bread thing. And God told them, take as much as you can eat and take 1 omer for each person, as much as they can eat. So it's, the illustration here is 1 omer is the amount of food that a person generally eats in one day. So the average person, what they eat in one day is 1 omer. So to give a comparison, if you eat, let's say 3 meals a day, 3 hamburgers, let's say a hamburger is enough to fill you up. So 1 omer is like 3 hamburgers. 1 ephah would be 10 times that. So imagine 30 hamburgers worth of food. So you're looking at about 1 month supply of food gathered in one day by Ruth. That's how much of a blessing this was. She came hoping to collect something for a day or two, or, it's something of that sort. And she came back with a month's supply of food. That's enough to make someone just go, wow. And it makes Naomi say, where did you go today? Like, how in the world did you do this? And Naomi noticed you had to have had help. And how in the world did you get so much food? And Ruth told Naomi everything, how she worked, and how she said, the man's name with whom I work today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi, she recognizes God is giving goodness. God is good. And Naomi also said, this man is a close relative of ours. He is one of our redeemers. We'll get into that a little bit, what that means. And Ruth the Moabite said, besides, he said to me, you shall keep close to my young men. This word, it means adolescents. It could also refer to like females. So it's possible in context, it's referring to the women that she was working with. So it's like men and women, young. It includes both. So there were the young people who were working, and there were also the young women. So in short, Boaz is saying, keep close to my workers until they have finished all of the harvest. So as they work, go ahead and work as you wish. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you could be assaulted, harassed. This guy's family. Stick with him. And so Ruth kept close to the young women of Boaz. And she worked the entire season. So several months of working. I'm guessing, I'm not sure how long a barley harvest is, a barley and wheat harvest. My guess is maybe 3 months, 4 months, but you're talking a while. And they lived together and worked. Now, about this redeemers, what is this whole redeeming thing? He is one of our redeemers. What is that? Deuteronomy 25 explains the situation. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. In other words, if a person gets married and dies without having kids, the next brother, usually one of the brothers, I believe it was like the next oldest, he should take that brother's wife as his own. So if he's married, take on a second wife. So that's what's going on here. If a brother dies without having any kids, one of the brothers would take her as his own. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. So it's now the first child, after the brother takes his dead brother's wife, the first child will not be considered under the lineage of the new husband or of this brother. It would be under the lineage and name of the dead brother. So it's kind of like he's not the brother's. He's not the brother's son. He's the dead brother's son. That's how it was considered as. Because it's the reason why they did this was so that inheritance would stay within the families. Back then, that was how they did things. What you own should stay within the land. What should stay within the family. Your property should stay within the family. Otherwise, you can have people losing their inheritance, and you may have one tribe that owns everything. It wouldn't be fair. But this way, what has been allotted by God during the time of Moses and Joshua stays within the tribe. The boundaries of the tribes remain the same. That was the point of it, and that this is just a continuation of that. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders shall call him, speak to him, and if he persists, saying, I do not wish to take her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull off his sandal or his shoe, and spit in his face. Bring shame upon the person. And she shall answer and say, so it shall be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of the house shall be called, and the name of his house shall be called in Israel, the house of him who has his sandal pulled off. And it would go on to the next of kin. So if that person doesn't want to take her, shame upon that brother. It was his duty. Then the next brother shall go, and it keeps on going. But the idea was keep land property, keep the boundaries as they are, so that you don't have things being stolen. And so going back to the story of Ruth and Naomi. So we have this initialization of the redemption. Because remember, Naomi hinted at it. Then Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Naomi sees how Ruth is. She's working her head off. She's working a lot. She's going there every day. And Naomi looks at her at the end of the season. After several months, she says, "You're working a lot. Let's try to get you a husband that will make life easier." And Naomi says, "Isn't Boaz our relative? It's with the young woman whom you were working." And as he is a redeemer. He's a kin. He's a relative. He is not sure if he is a brother of Elimelech. It's possible that he is a brother of Elimelech, or it's possible that he is a relative, but he is a close relative. Maybe he is like a nephew or something, but anyway, a close relative. That much we do know. And Naomi says, when he's out there winnowing the barley tonight at the threshing floor, at the place where they beat, wash yourself, anoint yourself, put on clean clothes, look nice, and go down to that threshing floor. And do not make yourself known to him until he's finished eating and drinking. In other words, don't do this in public, not in front of everyone's eyes. When he is alone and he is resting, come to him privately and talk to him. Make a proposal. Propose to him, in short. Propose to him. And but the way it works, when he lies down, when he is sleeping in his tent, uncover his feet, lie down next to his feet, and then he will tell you what to do. And Ruth said, "All that you say, I will do." So remember, with this custom of redemption, the woman had to initiate it. Wait, let me check. Okay, she didn't have to, according to Deuteronomy, she didn't have to initiate it. The brothers could have as well. But in here, Ruth and Naomi are initiating the process. If they would have just lived, they would have just let it all be. But Ruth comes in and proposes to the way that is accustomed. Now, this whole laying down at the feet, uncovering the feet, this is not written anywhere within the law, this was just a custom that had developed. And so Ruth went down to the threshing floor, just as her mother-in-law commanded her. Boaz ate, he drank, he was happy, he lay down, and Ruth came softly, just uncovered his feet and lay down next to his feet. And at midnight, he said, "Who are you?" So she's laying there for several hours. It wasn't just, uncover his feet, bow down, and he goes, "Oh, who are you?" No. Maybe she fell asleep. I'm thinking possibly not. But she is laying next to the feet till midnight. So you can say, after supper until midnight, she's lying there. And she says, "I am Ruth, your servant." Now, she was not employed by him. This is just it's a humbling response. And she says, "Spread your wings over your servant." for you are a redeemer. In other words, marry me. It is your duty according to the law. And look at Boaz's response. He's not in shock. He's not going, ay, ay, ay. It's, his remark is, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter, for you have made this kindness greater than the first. In other words, he's happy about it. Imagine this. It's like he's saying, yes, all right. This is even better than when you first came in. Yeah, I want to. And what he also notices, the reason why he's ecstatic about this, he says that he points out her character. Remember, his reasonings isn't, like, yes, you're beautiful or something like that. He points at her character and says, you have not gone after young men, whether they're poor or rich. He looks at her conduct, says, now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do what you ask. For my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. The King James Version, I love the way it phrases it. He says, the entire city knows that you are a virtuous woman. What is a virtuous woman? To give us an illustration what this means, let's look up Proverbs 31. And it says, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of anything, of spoil. She will do him good and no evil all the days of his life. She finds wool, flax, and works willingly with her hands. She's someone who loves to serve, who loves to work. She's like the merchant ships. She brings food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night and gives meat to her household. She rises up before everyone and cooks. And she makes not only food for herself and cares for herself, but she cares for the servants and the workers as well. She considers a field, she analyzes what to buy and then buys it. She does research and then acts on it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants things, vineyards and stuff like that. She doesn't just sit around. She makes things that will feed, that will gain money. She girds her loins with strength. This is her waist with strength. She strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good. She does things of good quality. Her candle doesn't go out at night. She makes sure that there's always enough to last the night. She lays her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. In other words, she's not a couch potato. She's not spoiled. She stretches out her hand to the poor. In other words, she cares. Yes, she reaches forth her hands to the needy, helps those who are in need. She's not afraid of the snow for her household. If it's cold, she's still going out to work. For all her household, they're clothed with scarlet. They're nicely dressed. And she makes herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known at the gates. In other words, someone of good reputation. They know him, and he sits there among the elders of the land. He's someone who teaches. It's not mean that he just, sit around and gossips. At the gates is where people came to seek counsel. At the gates is where to the gates is where people came to if there was a dispute, they would, the people at the gates would settle it. And we'll see some of this later on. It's Boaz, there comes a moment where he's going to gather elders from the gates. There's something that needs to be decided. You need witnesses, you go to the gates. So her husband is doing politics, in short. He's in the government. And so strength and honor are her clothing. And she shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. It's not a gossiper. It's what she says. She thinks about it. She speaks with wisdom. And in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat bread in idleness. She doesn't eat alone. She eats with others. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her children praise her, which is an even bigger compliment. Because the people in your household, they know how you act. And so her children praise her. Her husband also praises her. Many daughters have done virtuously. And this is what her husband says. Many daughters, many women are virtuous, but you have surpassed them all. A woman that fears the Lord shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her at the gates. What she does, everyone will know it. And that is the compliment that Boaz gives to her. Ruth, you are a hardworking woman. You do not chase after other guys. Your conduct these past few months, we've been watching you. This entire city has been watching you. And they know that you're not a woman who likes to party. You are someone who is virtuous. You are a godly woman. And he says, yes, I will take you. But there is a slight problem. He says, yes, it's true, I am a redeemer. But there is a redeemer who is closer to your family than I. And so by law, he should have first pick. It should go to him. But if he's not willing to redeem you, it's remain here tonight. In the morning, if he doesn't want to take you, I'll do it. If he takes you, though, go with him. Even though he loves Ruth, he tells her, I want to do things right. Let's do things properly. First, I'm going to talk to the next of kin. And then if he takes you, go with him. If not, I will. But remain here until morning. He doesn't send a woman out at night alone. Good man. He makes sure it's the morning. And so she lays at his feet. Impressive. She does not stand up. She stays at a bowing position at his feet. But arose before one could recognize one another. In other words, when it's at sunrise, before the golden hour, where you can see silhouettes, but you can't recognize who that person is, that's when she arose. I don't think she slept all night. She probably was staying awake. And he arose and said, let it not be known that a woman came to me to this threshing floor. Tell no one that you came to me tonight. We don't want them to get any ideas. Because when a woman and a man are alone at night, rumors spread. So it's understandable. He says, tell no one you were here. We don't want people spreading false rumors. And so he said, all right, bring out your garment. That's the pull it, it's, it kind of like extend your clothing out a little bit. And you put 6 measures of barley and sent her back. Because he said you must not go back empty-handed. Again, good man. You came to me. If people ask, and also it's a good cover story. People ask, you were at Boaz's place. Well, why'd you go to him? I went for some more barley. But also, he didn't send a woman home empty-handed. And so Ruth comes back, tells Naomi what had occurred. And Naomi says, now all we can do is wait. Hearing the response, Boaz is going to act. He wants you. And he's going to settle it today. I know him. And so Boaz goes up to the gate. Remember, man at the gate. And he sat there. And behold, the next of kin was passing by. Also, coming to the gate. It's where things were settled. And as he came by, Boaz told him, turn aside, friend. Come here. I want to talk with you. And he also took 10 elders. So 10 of the people who were in politics, who helped decide things, were witnesses. He gathered the people who sat at the gates. And he told them, all right, sit down, everyone. I have a matter to settle. And he said, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me that I may know, for there's no one besides you to redeem it, and then I am after you. So the land, it's when reading this, you may think, wait, Boaz, I thought this was about Ruth. And you're talking about land. What is going on? I think it's a strategy, but what is it with this whole land stuff? So remember, the land should stay within the allotted inheritance. And from this, it seems that when Elimelech left Moab, that land was not sold. Or maybe he gave it to, he let one of his family members, someone else, live in it. And then when Naomi came back, they gave that land and the house and stuff where she was living back to her. That's most likely what happened. We read there is this case where the daughters of Zelophehad, this is during the times of Moses, and Numbers 27. Now, Zelophehad, he had no sons. He only had daughters. And generally, a person's inheritance, a person's land would go to his sons. Generally, like the firstborn or something like that. Or they would divide it. But anyway, it would go to the sons. And so, but Zelophehad had no sons. He only had daughters, Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they came to Moses and said, our father died in the wilderness. He had no sons. Why should the name of our father be taken away from his clan when he had no son? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. In other words, the daughters were saying, instead of there's no brothers, who is the land going to go to? Someone else? Let it stay within the family. And God said, yeah, give them the possession. And he says, if a man dies and has no son, this is God saying, then you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter. And if he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. And if his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to the nearest kinsman of his clan, and he shall possess it. And it shall be for the people of Israel a statute and a rule, as the Lord commanded Moses. So probably went to the eldest daughter, and the daughters lived on the land, or they subdivided it. And there's also a second part. The daughters of Zelophehad, people were worried. They say, wait up, if they marry someone else, someone from another tribe or clan, that land is going to go over to that clan, and the land is going to go out of, the allotment. It's like it's going to be a tactic for people to steal land. And God says, they may marry who they wish, but they can only marry within the clan of the tribe of their father. The inheritance of the people shall not be transferred from one tribe to another. For every one of the people of Israel shall hold on to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. Every daughter who possesses an inheritance in any tribe of the people of Israel shall be a wife to one of the clan of the tribe of her father. So if a woman wants to hold on to the inheritance, her husband has to be someone who is within the family. Now it's interesting. There's no word here about the land transferring over to the wife. It's to the daughters, to the children, not the wife. But somehow, I'm guessing, when she came back, they gave it to her. That's most likely what happened. Now, in terms of the whole selling, that's passed down as inheritance. But the talk was about selling land. So what is it with that? Well, it's when people would sell a land, God says, land cannot be sold permanently, for the land is mine. This is God saying, all of you are strangers and sojourners with me. You're travelers. And in all the country you possess, you shall allow a redemption of the land. If you buy a piece of land, you have to provide an option for someone else or for the owner to buy it back. You have to allow that. If your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem what his brother has sold. And if the person sells it and they can't buy it back, one of his family members can buy it back for him, or they can buy it, but so that it stays within the clan. Now, if there is no sufficient means to recover it, if they can't buy it back, there is the year of Jubilee. So every 50th year, all the land would return back to the rightful owner. And the closer the year was to the year of Jubilee, the cheaper a piece of land was. So if a person buys a piece of land on the 49th year, he's buying it for dirt cheap because, that land could only be sold for dirt cheap because the person would have to give it back 1 year later. Whereas right after the Jubilee, if a person sells his land, it would be sold for a high price. Because if the person doesn't buy it back, he has 50 years of that land. However, this does not apply to a house that is within a wall. In other words, a city's built, a new city's built with like walls and stuff, and it's a person builds a house there. You have 1 year to buy it back, and that's it. Because land that was out in the fields and stuff, that's land property. This is just, you're not talking about land inheritance boundaries stuff. This is a house that was built inside a regular town or city. And for that, you have 1 year. That was the law. Now, the whole Jubilee thing didn't apply to the houses within the cities and stuff. And so that man said, I will redeem it. She has lands that they need to be bought. I'll buy it. I'm the next of kin. I'll take it. I mean, she has no kids. She's old. Who is that land going to go to? So I'm just going to buy it so that it stays within the family. And Boaz says, however, there's a caveat. The day that you buy the field from Naomi, you have to take Ruth. It's a double package. The widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. In other words, to keep the line of Elimelech, you have to take Ruth. And then the next of kin said, I can't take Ruth for myself. I can't redeem her. It's going to screw up my own family. It's going to screw up my own house. I can't take another wife. This means he was already married with a family. He says, I'm not going to take another wife. And so let it pass, let the redemption thing pass on to you. I can't do it. Now, remember we read in the book of Moses how they're supposed to take off the shoe and spit in his face. They did things in a nicer fashion here. The person takes off his shoe and he just gives it. So he takes off his shoe and gives it to Boaz. And this was a testament, a sign of saying, I can't fulfill the duty. Let someone else do it. And so then Boaz says, and so the person said, you buy her. Buy the land and redeem the land and redeem Naomi. And then Boaz says, you are all witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Now notice, his first son technically would be not under his name, but under the line of Elimelech, would be under the line of whoever Ruth's husband was. But he's taking the whole Elimelech household. So it's going to be Elimelech's kid. Technically not Boaz's on paper. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon. So Mahlon. He's saying, I'm taking that. I'm continuing Mahlon's line. That the name of the dead may not be cut off among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day. And everyone said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who's coming into your house like Rachel and Leah. They're the wives of Jacob. All the tribes of Israel came from them, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah, that's Old Town Bethlehem, and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. Why Perez? Well, because Boaz is from the line of Perez. That's most likely the reason why they mentioned that. If he did anything great, I'm not aware of it in the Bible. But from him, you have Boaz. It's from a long line. And so, notice, King David came from Boaz. So Ruth was King David's great-grandmother. And what is also interesting is that the mother of Boaz, if you remember from one of our previous studies, was who? Rahab. So Rahab from Jericho was the mother of Boaz. And then Boaz married Ruth. And they had children. They named him Obed. Obed had Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. So Boaz took Ruth. She became his wife. And everyone, when Ruth had a child, everyone was telling Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel." We can also make a correlation. You had a life that was, you see, falling apart. There was suffering. You lost everything. And then you had someone come, redeem that person, and turn their life around. It's a beautiful illustration of Jesus Christ, which is one reason why I believe this is also included in the Bible, this story. You have this beautiful illustration of redemption. Why did Naomi have to go through so much suffering? Without Naomi going through so much suffering, you wouldn't have had this. She wouldn't have met Ruth. Ruth would not have met Boaz. And you would not have this illustration of life that fell apart, going out into the world, coming back toward God, going back to his place, to Israel, taking action and living with God, and then being redeemed, which transforms the life and brings abundant blessings. Jesus Christ redeems us, changes our lives, and brings us abundant blessings. So if you have difficult times in your life right now, it's not the end. God is in motion, and he may be using your hard times as an illustration for you later on, or as an illustration for others. And with that, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, that you show us this illustration of redemption, that you show us this good example of a woman who, despite being in an environment that was ungodly, she created a godly environment where she was. And it was such a strong environment that two people who were from the outside world, two people who were non-believers, fell in love with you, Lord. And they fell in love with a godly life. Help us, Lord, to be godly examples wherever we are, to guide people toward you, that people looking at us would say, I want your God. I want what you have. I want to be around you. Help us to have that kind of positive influence. Use us, Lord, and be glorified in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. And with that, God bless you.